We're going to move to the Cavs in a sec, but a quick reminder that it is winner-take-all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/UCSS and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Yesterday, the Cleveland Cavaliers were granted permission to interview Timberwolves assistant Micah Nori for their open head coaching position. That is now 5 candidates the Cavs have requested and been granted access to interview. We talked about Chris Quinn. We talked about Johnny Bryant yesterday. Jason, what can you tell us about Micah Nori, the Timberwolves top assistant, and what he potentially could bring to the Cavs if he ends up being their head coaching choice?
One of the few guys there's a couple, I guess, on this list with no prior head coaching experience. He stepped in Minnesota when Chris Finch was sidelined with surgery, and he's been sort of considered like the Ted Lasso of coaches, right? Like he's very personable. He's always got a funny story to tell. He's got a deep history, Mike Malone in Denver and Sacramento. He's been around the league a little bit. And you know, Mike, you were one of the first to put his name up as a guy you thought could get a look, even before it was really confirmed or reported out that he would be the guy. Why did you like him so much?
And by the way, if he's Ted Lasso, did he come up like playing soccer, and now he's coaching basketball?
No, I don't think it was soccer.
Did you see Ted Lasso?
Yeah, I saw the first season. I watched the first season of it. I lost interest after that.
How do you lose interest?
The
show was fantastic.
I lost interest.
It's the show of the decade.
No, it is not.
It's still going.
It's absolutely the show. No, it's done. Go ahead, Mike.
One of the things I liked about Nori was his experience developing big men. He was in Sacramento with DeMarcus Cousins when he had the best years of his career. He went to Denver when Jokic was a rookie and helped him see the progression he made. He left before Jokic became MVP Jokic, but he went from a 10-point-per-game scorer to a 16 to an 18. Then he went to Detroit, and his first year in Detroit with Blake Griffin was when Blake Griffin rejuvenated his career, made a third-team All-NBA under Micah Nori. He goes to Minnesota with Karl-Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert. I just thought he's a guy who has a track record as an assistant, has been pretty successful everywhere he's been, and has a history of developing big men, which Kobe Altman alluded to in his end-of-season presser. Hey, we kind of put Evan Mobley's development on the back burner. That has to be something we push to the front burner. Is that the right way to say that?
Front burner, sure.
Yeah, push it forward.
How old is this guy?
Not that old. Micah Nori is...
I don't know. He's young.
Why do we think he seems like he's been an assistant coach for a long time. Why he's never been given a chance?
And he's from Ohio.
Oh, he's older than I thought.
Middletown, by the way.
He's older than I thought.
How old is he?
50.
50.
Oh.
I would have guessed early
Why has he
40s.
never had an opportunity, you think?
That's what I want to know.
There's you say that about, there's only 30 of these jobs.
Yeah,
and a lot of them get recycled, and you gotta sort of put in your time and pay your dues.
If you had to pick between him and Chris Quinn, who would you pick? Because I feel like they're about the same when you talk about.
I like Quinn better for what it's worth.
Yeah, because when you talk about both of them, they both seem to know how to develop big men, and if Evan Mobley seems to be the focal point on this, trying to get him to elevate his development, then I think the two leading candidates should be Chris and him, because those are the two that works the best with big man, and that's the one area that needs the biggest improvement. So my question to y'all is, if it came down to them two, which one would you
I think it's
comfortable?
impossible to answer because they've never been in that position.
That's the biggest
problem. When you hire you just don't know. It's like,
right.
And even if they have, like Kenny Atkinson, okay, some guys learn from their first experience and get better, and some guys don't.
Yes.
You look at Josh McDaniels. Everybody thought he'd be a great head coach. He went to Denver. He was a total disaster. And you're like, okay, well, he's going to be better the second time around. No, he wasn't. He was a total disaster the second time around. Some guys learn from that mistakes, and some guys don't.
And you don't know until you know, and
That's
then
right.
it's too late.
It's all
one way or the other.
It's a crapshoot.
Of all the names that are out there, I think I've said before, I'm underwhelmed by the entire list. There's no one on that list that I look at and think that's a massive upgrade over what they've got now. But if I had to pick one, probably right now, it'd probably be Borrego. But I could change my mind later on. I still think Kenny Atkinson is the favorite,
right,
to get it from everything that we've heard to this point. But I mean, take your time, cast a wide net, talk to as many
You
people.
mind? It ain't like
Talk
There's
to
no
as
rush.
Talk
Who
to as
is
many
the-
people as you can.
Is JJ Redick like the Lakers' #1 pick?
Yeah,
What happened with that? I thought it was done. Now it's been
they're not
stalled
going to
out.
announce anything till after the NBA Finals because he's calling the NBA Finals. So
gotcha. But it's done.
From all reports, he's putting together an assistant coaching staff, so you can read into that however you want.
All right, what do you got?
Jason, on the Hoop Collective podcast yesterday, Brian Windhorst said he's not to the belief that the Cavs will necessarily wait until Donovan Mitchell signs his extension or declines an extension to hire a head coach. That's kind of contrary to what you've been under the belief of, or at least what you think. Not necessarily reported, but just how you think it'll play out.
I just pointed it out based on what Kobe said at the end of season presser, that he thought it'd be a little aggressive to have a coach in place by the draft. And the draft is only a few days before
Which is a
free
weird
agency.
thing to say.
I was a little surprised by
Yeah.
it. Usually you have a coach in place by the draft.
Yeah.
I can't think of many examples where
When is the draft again?
June 26th.
June 26th
And when did he say this? It was still May, right?
Yeah.
So why would it be aggressive to take a month to find a coach? I mean, they
Depending on
haven't.
if Alex Jensen's still coaching on the Mavs, if you want to talk to Alex Jensen, maybe that's the guy who's
What, they're
lining
not
the
doing
weeds.
these things behind the scenes?
Well, but you're not going to hire the guy. You're not going to
Right.
while he's still in the finals, while his season's still going on.
Tonight, the first game of the finals, by the way?
Thursday.
Oh, Thursday.
So there's other, there could be more candidates that they want to talk to as the season ends and
Right.
lines up. I was only making the point of, okay, if Kobe's saying it's not a foregone conclusion they're going to have a coach in place by the draft, ideally he would love to have one, but he also said it would be a little bit of aggressive. Well, the free agency only begins a few days after the draft, so if you're
Right.
going to go that long, you might as well wait a few
Right.
more. When you're the only one out there and you have nobody else
Right.
you're competing against for a coach, there's no rush. That's the only point I was making.
yeah.
They better have a.
Yeah, you weren't saying like you've heard that they're going to do that. You're
Correct.
just connecting the dots.
Yes.
And it makes sense what you're saying.
My question, and Jason, I didn't mean to put on you that
No,
you
you're
reported
good.
that. I just know we had talked about
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
But let's just say for the sake of this argument that what Wendy's saying has some credence, that they may hire a coach before the Mitchell extension, which would probably mean before the draft and before free agency. Would you put any credence into the order in which they're scheduling these interviews and which names have been coming out first? Atkinson was the first one in Borrego, which are both CAA clients, which were the two front runners, according to Woj, when the Cavs moved on from JB. Would you put any credence into the order in which these interviews are coming out if the Cavs are in the mindset they're going to make a hire maybe quicker than the draft?
Not really. Atkinson and Borrego were the two names that we heard. Thanks for giving Woj the credit on that. Appreciate it.
Johnny Bryant was first reported by our own Jason Lloyd.
No, that's not true. Ian Begley had it out there first. I even realized that. But
You see what I'm saying?
yeah, I don't think the order necessarily matters. The one thing that you alluded to that I do think is interesting, all of those guys are CAA clients, all of them, and CAA also reps Donovan. So I don't know Alex Jensen. I don't know who his agent is. If he becomes a candidate down the road, when the Mavs season is over, if he gets an interview or not. So I'd have to look and see who his agent is. But it's just interesting to me that all the guys are interviewing are all CAA guys.
We had Fedor on the other day. You weren't here, and he made the point, because we've talked about hiring David Blatt before you brought LeBron.
Yeah.
And he thought the comparison wasn't as good because with and without LeBron was a huge difference in what the team was going to be.
Yes.
Whereas with or without Donovan, it's going to be a difference, but not to the level of with or without LeBron.
But with Donovan, you kind of probably have a sense of what kind of coaching style he likes.
Sure.
And who he likes.
Right.
And if you don't have him, you don't necessarily maybe align with the guy.
You're less pigeonholed, maybe.
Yeah. That's the only point that I would make on that.
Yes.
Not that the team would be so drastically different. It would be, if Donovan's here, you're trying to do part of the sale is, well, who do you want?
That's right.
And
yeah, you're not rebuilding like they would have been if LeBron hadn't come back.
Correct. But it was an odd spot to be in 2014.
I wonder who Donovan looks like. I wonder who, would it be Johnny Bryant?
That's who I think he's closest to of all those guys on that list. I think he's closest with Johnny Bryant.
So if Johnny Bryant got this job, it would be 100% Donovan Mitchell pulled.
Well, see, I hate saying that because that makes it sound like Johnny Bryant didn't earn it.
Right.
And Johnny Bryant's a good coach. And he's been around with a bunch of different teams. He's really highly respected in New York with the Knicks. So I don't want to say that because that's disrespectful to –
Right.
And it makes it sound like he was handed the job and he didn't earn it. But certainly, the ties are undeniable. The connection between the two of them is undeniable.
Is Bronny James going?
Well, that's different.
Getting to the NBA
That's
combine
different.
because his father is LeBron James?
Of course.
Did he earn it though?
No.
Okay.
But so what?
I'm just saying. It doesn't matter. What I'm
There's all
saying,
kinds of dentists and
There's a
orthodontists.
lot of legacies
doesn't matter.
in the media. A lot in the media.
Well, that's true too.
I mean, come on.
What I'm saying is, and at some point, it's not about what you know, it's who you know. And in this
Yeah,
situation,
but
if that's the case, so
I
what?
think it sounds like, and again, you know better than me, Jason, but it sounds like Johnny Bryant is maybe the perfect combo of qualified, and it gives them an advantage with Donovan.
Certainly, yeah.
Yeah.
I think he checks both of those boxes.
Right. I mean, you don't want to hire a guy who's completely unqualified for the job, even if it's somebody
they did
the
that in
player likes.
2014.
Well, if they would have did that,
Exactly.
if they do that, then that's an uproar. Then that's if he was unqualified. First of all, he shouldn't even be getting the interview if he was unqualified.
Right.
I would imagine he's done something good to get this look to begin with.
He's highly thought of with the Knicks.
Okay.
He's Tom Thibodeau's right
So
hand man.
so you're okay with it?
I'm
said you don't.
I'm underwhelmed with all of them.
Yeah.
Like I'm just sort of ambivalent.
You're saying they missed it last year. They should have did it last.
But one of those guys might be the next really good head coach. Who
You
knows?
just don't. Chris Quinn. I mean, Chris Quinn certainly has the pedigree of if you're in Miami for
That's a great organization.
10 years now, you ought to have been able to pick something up from Pat
Yeah,
Riley and Eric
but-
Spoelstra and the way they go about doing things. So I wouldn't have a problem if it was Chris
I
Quinn.
talked to a couple of my guys in Miami over the weekend who could not have spoken more highly about Chris Quinn and what he brings. We talked about it on the show yesterday. To Jason's and to Bull's point about last year, there were a lot of guys with like experience, track record, and proven track records in the open free agency head coaching cycle. Earl, what are you
What
opening?
is happening over there?
Earl's opening snacks, but it sounds
My
like an
God, it
earthquake's
took him like
going
10
on
minutes
my
to
right.
open that bag.
But this year, it's an unknown. And, Steve, take this list real quick. This is the guys who have been requested and granted interviews with the Cavs. There are plenty of guys with proven track records, like Frank Vogel, for example. If you wanted a guy with, like, a more proven history that are out there,
Right.
It doesn't seem like that's the barrel the Cavs are deciding to go fishing in. So there are options that have proven and have more
Larry
success.
Bird's out there.
Well, I feel like that's
Yeah, but they've made a conscious effort, and Ty, then I want you to chime in, but those don't seem like the candidates the Cavs are after.
I
Better,
feel
for
like
better or worse.
In all sports, they always want the younger, hip coach that's
You want the unknown
yeah
versus the retread. A
It's
lot
like,
of people.
even in football,
Fans do,
Even
certainly.
in football, like it's been other coaches out there, but they all go with some younger guy because it's something about getting players to relate to you and being able to put yourself in the shoes or not being that far removed. I mean, look at Stephen Vogt. Well, what he's doing, he's only a couple years removed, and they love him over there, and he's doing all
Chris
these amazing
Quinn
things.
has a lot of Stephen Vogt in him, for the record.
See, and he's
Journeyman.
from Ohio, so there you go.
Yeah, both from Ohio, journeyman, backups throughout their entire career, had success but not like sustained year.
Stephen
year
Vogt is not from
Not from
Ohio.
Ohio. No.
Now it's talking about
No,
Chris
no,
Quinn.
but Chris Quinn is from Ohio.
Oh, yeah.
But they are guys who at position catcher, point guard, are the equivalent positions in different sports, kind of the coach on the field or on the court. They have some similarities. But you mentioned Micah
Stephen Vogt
Nori.
was probably a better baseball player than Quinn was.
He was, yes. But I'm just saying journeyman throughout the most of their career. Jason, real quick.
Yeah.
You mentioned Micah Nori being kind of like Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
Bull, just because I know you love Ted Lasso, these are some third quarter interview clips, 20 seconds real quick, of Micah Nori this year, who is a great interview. Steve?
Nothing fast break points. Boom goes the dynamite. There goes our lead. We got to treat Bane like you do the elf on a shelf on Christmas morning. You got to find him. You know, he makes everybody comfortable. He's like popcorn during Saturday night movies. Our paint defense was like 7-Eleven, open 24 hours. Realized they had hits on like Donkey Kong the way they started out. First time all year that we were kind of on almost like a hot mess express. Nothing fast break points. Boom.
So he has a lot of those weird
Coach.
idioms like Ted Lasso.
Coach.
This has come up a couple times, though. I want to touch on this real quick because I've heard a couple
The
times.
fact that you're out of your gourd when it comes to Ted Lasso?
No, that never comes up because I'm usually right.
Yeah, totally wrong.
No,
Right.
but this idea that like they should have fired JB last year because there was better coaches out there last year, I kind of get why people would say that. But the only like really good name in my opinion was Ime Udoka, and Houston snatched him up fast. Like I don't remember. I was just trying to look and see when Ime hired him or when Houston hired him, but they got out in front because they knew he was going to be a top candidate. The rest of the guys. I mean, Monty Williams has been a disaster in Detroit.
Right.
Nick Nurse, I guess you could say, was a big name, and
Udoka
certainly,
was April 24th.
so they got before it even.
Yeah.
I mean, That's right when the season ended. I thought
Playoffs
it was
barely started.
Yeah, so they got out ahead of everybody on that one, and the rest of the names, like Adrian Griffin was a disaster in Milwaukee. Nurse, you could say, I guess. I'm not a huge Nick Nurse fan, but I can see why people would say he's a big name you can go get. But the rest of the list is very I thought was really underwhelming.
It's ridiculous. Again, you don't know if a guy's going to be a good head coach till he's your head coach, even if he has experience. So the big names don't matter. It doesn't mean they're going to be good in other places.